Everybody says that they like free speech, but actually they don't really, and quite often the expression, I really, really like free speech, is then followed by a but. But I don't actually like what you said, but I don't think he should have been allowed to say that, but I think that was wrong. Because we don't actually like to hear people disagreeing with us or making us sound silly, and we particularly dislike people expressing our own secret doubts on any subject, which is the thing which gets people more enraged than anything else.
I exempt myself from the Speaker's kind offer of protection that was so generously proffered at the opening of this evening. Anyone who wants to say anything abusive about or to me is quite free to do so, and welcome, in fact, at their own risk. But before they do that, they must have taken, as I'm sure we all should, a short refresher course in the classic texts on this matter, which are John Milton's Areopagitica being the great hill of Athens for discussion and free expression, Thomas Paine's Introduction to the Age of Reason, and I would say John Stuart Mill's essay on liberty, in which it is variously said, I'll be very daring and summarize all three of these great gentlemen of the great tradition of especially English liberty in one go. What they say is, it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is the right of everyone in the audience to listen and to hear. And every time you silence somebody, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because you deny yourself the right to hear something. In other words, your own right to hear and be exposed is as much involved in all these cases as is the right of the other to voice his or her view. Indeed, as John Stuart Mill said, if all in society were agreed on the truth and beauty and value of one proposition, all except one person, it would be most important, in fact, it would become even more important, that that one heretic be heard, because we would still benefit from his perhaps outrageous or appalling view. In more modern times, this has been put, I think, best by a personal heroine of mine, Rosa Luxemburg, who said that the freedom of speech is meaningless unless it means the freedom of the person who thinks differently.
And of course, in our schools, increasingly, children are taught not how to think, but what to think. And when they get to university, they're taught the same thing, only hotter and stronger. So here we have a society in which it's increasingly difficult for anybody actually to hold a dissenting opinion and to express it. If you do, you're in trouble. It won't be that the thought police will come calling, at least not quite yet. It won't be that you'll be flung into prison, not generally. Probably the police won't visit you, though the police do patrol Twitter quite vigorously. What will almost certainly happen is that if you step out of line and say something which isn't approved of or correct, you'll lose your job. And you'll be the victim also of a Twitter storm in which you'll be publicly shamed and you'll be destroyed as a person.
If everybody in North America is forced to attend at school training in sensitivity on Holocaust awareness and is taught to study the final solution, about which nothing was actually done by this country or North America or the United Kingdom while it was going on, but let's say as if in compensation for that, everyone's made to swallow an official and unalterable story of it now, and it's taught as the great moral exemplar, the moral equivalent of the morally lacking elements of the Second World War, the way of stilling our uneasy conscience about that combat. If that's the case with everybody, as it more or less is, and one person gets up and says, you know about this Holocaust, I'm not sure it even happened. In fact, I'm pretty certain it didn't. That person doesn't just have a right to speak. That person's right to speak must be given extra protection, because what he has to say must have taken him some effort to come up with, might contain a grain of historical truth, might in any case give people to think about why do they know what they already think they know. How do I know that I know this, except that I've always been taught this and never heard anything else? It's always worth establishing first principles. It's always worth saying, what would you do if you met a Flat Earth Society member? Come to think of it, how can I prove the Earth is round? Am I sure about the theory of evolution? I know it's supposed to be true. Here's someone who says there's no such thing, it's all intelligent design. How sure am I of my own views? Don't take refuge in the false security of consensus and the feeling that whatever you think, you're bound to be okay because you're in the safely moral majority. One of the proudest moments of my life, that's to say, in the recent past has been defending the British historian David Irving, who is now in prison in Austria for nothing more than the potential of uttering an unwelcome thought on Austrian soil. He didn't actually say anything in Austria. He wasn't even accused of saying anything. He was accused of perhaps planning to say something that violated an Austrian law that says only one version of the history of the Second World War may be taught in our brave little Tyrolean republic. And that's a scandal. And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass. Go again and see not just the film and the play, but read the text of Robert Bolt's wonderful play, Man for All Seasons. Some of you must have seen it, where Sir Thomas More decides that he would rather die than lie or betray his faith. And at one moment, More is arguing with a particularly vicious witch-hunting prosecutor, a servant of the king and a hungry and ambitious man. And More says to this man, you'd break the law to punish the devil, wouldn't you? And the prosecutor, the witch hunter, says, break it? He said, I'd cut down every law in England if I could do that, if I could capture him. And More says, yes, you would, wouldn't you? And then when you'd corner the devil and the devil turned round to meet you, where would you run for protection? All the laws of England having been cut down and flattened, who would protect you then? Bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that every time you violate or propose to violate the free speech of someone else, you, in potentia, you're making a rod for your own back, because the other question raised by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes is simply this: who's going to decide? To whom do you award the right to decide which speech is harmful, or who is the harmful speaker, or to determine in advance what are the harmful consequences going to be that we know enough about in advance to prevent? To whom would you give this job? Did you hear any speaker in the opposition to this motion, eloquent as one of them was, to whom you would delegate the task of deciding for you what you could read? To whom you would give the job of deciding for you, relieve you of the responsibility of hearing what you might have to hear? Do you know anyone? Hands up. Do you know anyone to whom you'd give this job? Does anyone have a nominee? You mean there's no one in Canada good enough to decide what I can read or hear? I had no idea. But there's a law that says there must be such a person, or there's a subsection of some piddling law that says it. Well, the hell with that law then. It's inviting you to be liars and hypocrites and to deny what you evidently know already. You're giving away what's most precious in your own society, and you're giving it away without a fight, and you're even praising the people who want to deny you the right to resist it. Shame on you while you do this. Make the best use of the time you've got left. This is really serious.
So, in general, people are learning bit by bit that it's not safe to say quite a lot of things it would have been safe to say 20 years ago. And in 10 years' time, the number of things you're allowed to say will be even smaller. So I think I can say with some confidence, free speech is dying in this country. We don't have the First Amendment that the United States has, which defends it by law. It can only be defended in the hearts of the people, and if they don't care about it, how can it survive?